name is Ayesha Nurdjaja. Today we are at Shukette restaurant in New York City. Shukette is a Middle Eastern restaurant. We're in Chelsea. We really are inspired by old traditions in food, but really bringing kind of like a nuance to them through my lens of what I love to eat. I think Shukette is very unusual because the physical setup. It's like dinner and a show. So there's no behind the scenes. You get to see everything. We're grilling, making breads to order. But what I find unique about the restaurant is it's very vegetable forward. So I think when people think about Middle Eastern cuisine, they automatically think about meat on skewers and hot coals. But they forget about how highly seasonal it is. I think the Mediterranean Middle Eastern diet has always been like what's in season, and to celebrate that in a minimalist way that extracts the most flavor. I think I'm very driven by the green market and what I see that's in season. Sometimes it's a dish that lasts on the menu for 6 weeks, and sometimes it's one day. So if I see persimmons, which is a fruit that I happen to love that's in season right now, I think about how could I really accentuate this fruit without really gussing it up too much. So I think my approach is always bold flavors, vibrant. I think people always eat with their eyes. I know I do. And really extracting the max amount of flavors and kind of think about flavor combinations that complement one another. Cooking has evolved. And we always thought about the meat being kind of the center, or protein, if you will. But I try to use what vegetables that I can and try to highlight them as the main thing. So sometimes, yes, you need to pickle something or slow cooking it for a long time. The Middle Eastern Mediterranean cuisine, like summer vegetables, is really at its peak when you're thinking of it, right? You think about eggplant and tomatoes, those herbs like basil. So what we try to do is pickle some eggplant. We definitely, during pepper season, all types of chilies, ones that are hot and ones that aren't, we definitely pickle those. And then throughout the winter, we're able to see these glimpses of brightness. We can tomatoes, and then sometimes use them in the winter months to kind of have them and spice them, sometimes in like a shakshuka spice, and slow roast them in the oven so that we're able to take our favorite vegetables but still celebrate them in the winter. But if we're not doing that, I really try to do my best to showcase the things that are in winter, like Brussels sprouts. I don't know about you, but I'm over Brussels sprouts. So I try to think of a way they're not to just fry them or not roast them, but apply different types of cooking techniques that could really make them shine. I think my advice is to taste, to learn, to continually push themselves to taste different flavors and combinations of flavors in order to get themselves to a point where they feel comfortable cooking it. And I think that comes from a lot of trial and error. Like parsnip, such a humble vegetable. How do you get the sweetness out of parsnip? What applications of cooking and spices or techniques that you can use to really make it a star? I think people are always concerned with the diet. I think it's always at the forefront of what they're eating, whether it's allergy-based or based on basically their cognitive things or what's important to them, whether it's the environment or plant-based or eating less meat. So when I thought of the concept of Shukette, I really wanted it to be a neighborhood restaurant. And I wanted it to be a place where someone can come here as a solo diner and eat something simple. Maybe it's just a piece, one of our breads with the dips, or maybe it's just a vegetable and not a protein, or maybe just a protein. So I think that was really my approach when I thought about it. I think that guests are really thought forward when they think about where they want to eat and what they want to feel. And I think the idea of when you eat here is that like you're not rolling out of here. Of course, you can push the limits at any restaurant, no matter what you are, to feel that way. But I think there's a sensibility to my cooking where it's like light and bright, and that you're having all of these small plates that pack a lot of flavor, and you're not really thinking of it as, oh, I missed that chicken, or I didn't have that steak. And not that I'm deterring you from having it, but there's a lot of healthy, plant-forward recipes on the menu. What has me very excited about cooking now is kind of like looking back at where I was to where I am. And I think when you're first learning about cooking, it's all about the technique. And it's all about looking at old world style cooking, like French cuisine or even Italian cuisine, and how the layering of flavors go. And I think as the restaurant evolves, sometimes we don't have the time or people that have the technique. And of course, we're constantly pushing people to learn. But when you don't, you have to think of like quick cooking methods. So maybe relying more on like sauteing or more on the raw end of things so that you could extract flavor without it being such a huge process. So I'm kind of excited to see the evolution of that. I look back at some of the dishes that I've done like 10 years ago, and although I have fond memories of it, it's kind of nice to have seen like how, that evolution that I have made as a chef. Definitely in the vegetable field, I think about like how when I thought about the menus for Shukette and Shukette, it was never my intention to make them very vegetable focused. I think it was just the cuisine kind of lend itself to that, and things that I was able to get my hands on from local farmers that really inspire me. I hope to really continue on this path because I'm really excited by it. I think the beauty about Shukette is I always say it's like a dinner and a show. So I love that element of it. I love talking to people. I love also listening to people and what they have to say about the food. I don't want to say that it sways the way that I cook, but it's definitely food for thought. My advice to young chefs and cooks starting out now is to really invest. You know, a lot of times you go to a restaurant that you think you love and you go and trail and you go there for one time and you're like, oh my God, I love this place. There's a lot that involves people to stay at restaurants these days. And I think the one thing that you should really look at is connection. Connection to the cuisine, connection to the food, connection to the culture and the kitchen. It's not, I always say that it's not the chef you work for or the restaurant you work for, it's the chef that you want to be. So even though years later, maybe that my goals and things that I feel that are accolades or accomplishments have changed, I always feel that the choices that I made as a young chef or young cook and the restaurants that I chose was always because I had a connection to the cuisine and the technique and what I thought that I was going to learn from there. I think that to me, progression and change kind of go synonymous, and a lot of the times that brings conflict. Conflict in kind of way what you knew and where you can push yourself. I believe like being a chef is an artistry, and being able to express your art in different ways is really amazing. But at the end of the day, you really need to learn technique and how to be able to do that. Or talking about what I said before about traditional recipes. You want to make a hummus, great. But what is hummus? How do you make hummus? You know, how are you sourcing your chickpeas? And things like that are really important. So I feel like progression is change, but it also means growth.
Any ingredients you're loving cooking with right now?
Ingredients that I'm loving cooking with now. I'm just trying to think of, this is like my worst season. You know, when summer's over, I just like kind of want to cry. So I go into the field like where I don't want to touch butternut squash and all those other things. So I'm trying to think of something that's been exciting me lately. Carrots, believe it or not. I fell out of love with carrots a long time ago. I think it was just one of those ingredients that's not only a workhorse, but everybody does carrots. But the truth is that carrots just lend such beautiful texture and flavor in all different cooking applications. Roasting them really brings out the sweetness. Sometimes if they're shaved or raw, they bring crunchiness. So I've had like a little bit of a love affair with carrots lately. We made a carrot harissa. So we made a spicy sauce, and I was like, what could we put in it to kind of tamper the heat? So we roasted carrots and kind of pureed it together, and it's making, it's the sauce that cauliflower is like resting on right now, with pickled currants and cilantro and garlic. I can't live without garlic. So I would say, yeah, it's kind of nice to be fond of carrots. When you have chefs and cooks that work with you for a long time, carrots and celery are like the two things, and bell peppers that I'm always like, no. So I kind of refrain from, but I've fallen in love with carrots again. You know, I think we all talk about the workforce and how difficult it is to find cooks. And I think the challenge is to try, when I was a cook, there was no challenge. You came into a restaurant, you learned from like being in school or reading about being a chef that you had to be dedicated, that you had to learn, and it was like everything was a yes chef. So I think it hasn't been challenging, but going back to like progress, just kind of changing who I was and understanding that there's more teaching involved sometimes. And just because you say it has to be done this way, people want explanations for those things. So I think being a great chef is all about being a master and a student simultaneously. I think that's kind of been fun to see.